Hello, 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 and welcome to RantLand. This is a brand new episode, and today we are going to discuss Wonder Man. And specifically, I'm just going to sit here and rant about Wonder Man, episodes 1 and 2. Gonna do each, there's 8 episodes, so I'm gonna do um, 4 separate mini episodes of this review style just to see how I feel about doing it this way. So I'll do 4 episodes with 2 of the show's episodes per video. Okay. I might eventually take these episodes and crush them into like a heroic look like I've been doing with the Spider-Man and the Amazing Friends series. So we'll see what we do with that. That being said, I don't know a lot about Wonder Man in terms of the comics. So I am personally going into this blind. So we have this review sort of thing where we are going into this not knowing a lot about the characters. So all of my knowledge is strictly from watching the show itself. So that is one thing that is going to be interesting to look at. So, with that being said, here we go with Wonder Woman episode 1, where it talks about Simon Williams, who is a child when the episode starts, and he's basically watching this Star Trek 1980s style show um, called Wonder Man, and it's basically like Flash Gordon uh, meets Star Trek kind of show, where all of them are just basically, discussing superhero stuff from the like 60s and 70s. And then it flash forwards to the present where, he's now a struggling actor. He's a profession or not perfect. He is a perfectionist, and obviously I am not. Uh, and he's trying to get his mind set on the role that he's doing for the MCU's version of American Horror Story. He's one of those actors who overthinks everything. And, I'm not an actor, but when I poke fun of movies with my superhero critic character, you know, I cannot do the stuff that actors do. I would love to get into acting, but I personally don't have that, you know, ability to do so, nor the funds to go to acting school to get said abilities. So in my case, it's just I do what I can and make jokes and all that kind of shit. That being said, Simon Williams, he's on the set for his new show, but in the end of it, eventually, because of all the changes he's trying to do to his character, even though he's just supposed to be the background character that ends up getting killed. Um, Everyone eventually gets fed up with him changing everything, so they go and he gets fired. He has a full list of bad things happen in one day. He gets fired. His girlfriend leaves him, and during all of this stressful stuff, he ends up meeting Trevor Slattery at a movie theater because he tries to go see a movie to take his mind off of things. I will say I hate Trevor Slattery as a character. Um, just so dumb of a character, but ugh. if we're gonna have to sit through this person, we're gonna have to sit through this person. So that being said, um, they're watching the movie, they start talking actor stuff, and then Trevor mentions to Simon that there's a Wonder Man remake film coming out, and then that, you know, he should that Trevor himself is auditioning for the role. So Simon goes to his manager, begs to go to this audition, and in the process, she says no because you just got fired this morning. Um, which makes no sense. You're my manager. It's your job to make sure I can find a different job if I lose my job, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so when her back is turned, he or I wouldn't say hacks, but he goes through her emails and finds the location and then pretends to be her so that he can, get this audition. He ends up going there, re-meeting Trevor. He's stressing himself out, and the show keeps alluding to something about him is different. Um, he ends up doing the audition, uh, and goes out to drinks with Trevor, and ends up they go to drink, and he has a bunch of stuff, and then once Simon leaves, Trevor gets a phone call, and you find out that there's something going on with Trevor, as the DODC is the ones calling them. Basically, they are the disaster cleanup crew, and they're trying to keep an eye on Simon Williams. And that's the first episode. So these episodes aren't hour long, these are like half-hour episodes. So I feel like it's a rough start for the series. You're getting the premise. Obviously it's not an actual superhero show, it's more of a we are, it's a superhero franchise that it's a franchise in a superhero franchise, but it's not a typical superhero show, and it's a show about a show about a show. So Simon, he's a great character. You see everything that he's struggling with. He's trying to keep his job, he's trying to keep his relationship, but everything just keeps falling apart, and nothing seems to be going his way. Um, And to be honest, that was basically the full episode. Like, you really don't get a lot of development within the first episode. You just see Simon living in one day of his life. Um, and, having to deal with the character of Trevor. I hated him in Iron Man 3. I hated him in Shang-Chi. So it's just one of those things. I can't stand that specific character. So, moving on to episode 2, which is entitled Self Tape. It starts where we get a small backstory on what Trevor's actually doing, and you see that after the events of Shang-Chi, which by the way I still think I need to do an episode of Superhero Critic on. Um, But after the events of Shang-Chi, Trevor's in the airport. He's trying to go home. He wants to go back to Hollywood, try to find a new job, all this other stuff. He's tackled by guards and arrested for, the quote, the terrorism stuff. And he instead is offered a job to work for the DODC, which he takes without hesitation. And the job ends up being to befriend Simon and figure out what his powers are and um, what he's doing. Um, they don't really showcase any of his powers yet. Um, But the episode eventually does get to a point where his stress takes over. However, we go back to his manager who's pissed off that he pretended to get or pretended to be her and get himself this audition, even though that the director of it loved his audition. So, things are starting to work out, but, Simon needs to get a self tape set and made so that, you know, they can do the role and all that kind of stuff. So part of the episode is he's mentally psyching himself out. He's part of this whole situation and where his character is he's overthinking acting. Instead of just doing the role, he's trying to come up with random stuff. So the character that he ends up getting for this separate audition or whatever is basically a waiter. He's given two lines and that's it. That's all he has to say. But he can't overthink the story aspect of who this waiter is, even though they're a minor character. So he's thrown into, why is this waiter a waiter type of mindset. Um, so eventually it gets to a point where he's talking to himself, he auditions to himself, he throws the big audition, taping himself ask or saying each part so that he can respond to himself. Um, but he gets to a point that while he's trying to figure things out, he happens to see a picture of his now ex girlfriend, which causes his powers to explode his house. Well, not explode, but like destroy one of his walls. But the thing with it is, it kind of bothers me that they don't actually show his power going off. They just cut to an outside of his house and do the sound effects of his power going off. They don't even actually show his power going off, which kind of is annoying. Like, they do show like his powers within his eyes, like they give small effects to his eye pupils. Those who his eyes will flash red and black. But they don't really go far into anything. Alright, so because of that, he calls Trevor to get some help. They basically have the majority of the rest of the episode is a self tape trying. He tries to spend the whole day trying to get the self tape recorded. Um, Trevor takes him to a friend. They go to a recording studio first, and the recording studio doesn't really work. Um, so then Trevor tries to take him to a friend's place, paid with fucking Joe Pantel. I can't pronounce Joe's last name. I'm not even gonna try. But they go to the actual actor named Joe. They go to his real home. And he basically just plays himself in the universe, which that's now two real actors who actually play themselves. The other being Kevin Bacon in the MCU. So that's kind of ironic. But Joe and Trevor have this fight over their past, and Simon ends up saving Trevor or whatever, and then it turns into Trevor going home and helping Simon record and all that other stuff. And after they finally get the full self tape done, Trevor, while Simon runs to the bathroom, Trevor starts downloading all of Simon's personal stuff off of Simon's computer. Um, all in the process, Trevor finds what happened to Simon's wall with it being exploded. And that's where the episode ends. Uh, they don't really go into it at all on what actually Simon's powers are. They don't go into any of that other thing. But the whole overarching plot is that apparently in this universe, um, those with superpowers are not allowed to be actors, which I don't understand the logic for that. Um, it really doesn't make sense on why you would ban a superpowered person from being an actor. Um, but it really doesn't go into detail on why that. So it's just weird. So I guess my final thoughts for the second episode is again much of the same. It's kind of boring, to be honest. Um, keep in mind, I know that this is not supposed to be an actual superhero movie or superhero show. That it's an acting show. It's a show within a show. Uh, it's just really, really boring. Um, I watching the episodes, I found myself um I'm ADHD. If you can't tell by the distractions and the ums in these in this episode. But I really have I really had a big problem paying attention enough to the show. That might just be me, but I do think that the majority of this show so far is extremely boring. Um, so with that being said, am I enjoying it so far? Yes, but at the same time, no. Like I'm enjoying seeing where the show is going to go, but we're expect everyone. It's an MCU show, so why is there no superheroing? Like, I feel like that's where my brain's at. Um, stuff like Jessica, freaking fuck the Alias parody, Jessica Drew. What the hell? Couldn't think, not Jessica Drew, Jessica Jones. I'm not thinking about Spider Woman. Jessica Jones. That show is supposed to be, you know, detective-y and set like that, but with this ish, I know they try to make every show different. It's just I don't think this specific show is for me in general. Do I think it could be better? Yeah. Am I looking forward to the next couple of episodes? Definitely. Um so with that being said, I do want to thank you for listening to this episode of RantLand. If you enjoyed it, thank you. I do plan on doing the other episodes as I watch them. So, that being said, thank you for listening or watching if you're watching the visual version. That being said, thank you for listening. And always remember to keep on ranting.